This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I am your host. I am your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight on the X-Zone Broadcast Network and the Starcom Radio Network. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can listen to the X-Zone 724-365 as well as our live shows at www.xzoneradiotv.com. My first guest tonight is BETH LUSCOMBE. We're talking to Beth in Sydney, Australia tonight. And Beth is with Access Paranormal. Now, Beth is very passionate about the topic of the paranormal. Beth has had many years of experience investigating the supernatural, in some cases, in some of the world's most well-known locations. Now, on her return from living in the United Kingdom, she created and manages the successful Access Paranormal website for the Australian paranormal community. Joining me now is BETH LUSCOMBE from Access Paranormal. And Beth, welcome to the X-Zone.
Thank you very much, Rob. This is great. I really appreciate it.
It's really nice being able to... Craig, can you just take care of that for me? Thank you. It's very nice being able to talk into the future.
That's true.
Because you're over there in Australia, you're across the international date line, which means that it's tomorrow over there already.
Yes, I'm having breakfast as we speak. So yes,
wow.
It's, the future looks great on this side.
Beth, tell us about the paranormal in Australia. Is it the same as it is in the United States, Canada, and Europe, or are there special, unique paranormal occurrences that are only found in Australia?
Good question, Rob. It's as far as the size of the paranormal field here in Australia, it's a lot smaller. So with paranormally active locations, there aren't as many. And it's a large country as well. So a lot of I think it ends up being about 90% of Australia is actually uninhabitable. So you actually can't even live in most of this beautiful country because of the conditions.
Right.
But the country itself obviously has been based a lot on the Aboriginal spirituality originally. So the folklore from the Aboriginal community is huge. With in the beginning parts of this country. So, Min lights are very, very unique to Australia, where there are lights that people see at night and they call to you and you go to follow them and then sort of bad things happen. So people go missing.
Wow.
And the bunyip, which is another mythical spirituality, a spiritual creature, I guess you could say, in Aboriginal spirituality that is considered to be out in the wild and is part of of the dream time, which is what the Aboriginal culture calls it, with these beautiful mythical ideas of how the earth actually formed. And then, of course, we've got our Yowie, which is, as I understand, is your Sasquatch. And apparently the difference, I've been told, is that ours is a little bit more grumpier than yours. So, it's a little bit meaner, a bit more aggressive, but just as hairy. And there's sightings in the area that I live where he's actually been spotted as well. So that's very sort of unique to the Australian paranormal field here. But yes, very much so. It's a lot more smaller. We don't have a lot of available paranormal locations to investigate, which is a bit of a pain, to say the least. It's very, very different here in that regard. I know in the States, in my experience, it's been much easier to be able to get into locations, and it's a lot more free in thinking about the paranormal. It doesn't have the same stigma as it does here in Australia.
Now, in your opinion, what is the most haunted location in Australia?
Oh, isn't it always the way that there's the one that you can't talk about? There's one in regional New South Wales which has never ceased to surprise me. It's a place that the audible phenomena is something that I've not been able to replicate and or have at that level. There's voices and footsteps and bangs in this particular location that is completely abandoned, and you're the only person there. And this is just, it's a very, very unique location, and I think it's because of where it's situated, not just what's actually happened there as well. And so that would have to be, unfortunately, the good old undisclosed location I can't talk about. So there is.
How come you can't talk about it?
Because the owners are in the midst of changing, and it's a location they don't want to draw a lot of attention. And that's a big thing here in Australia. You'll find a lot of places don't want you to know that it's haunted, which is really ironic because there's a whole other audience out there of people that would be willing to go and visit and experience, potential activity. But these locations just are very judgmental in having a paranormal or ghost association with their location.
Fascinating. You and I were talking briefly about UFOs in Australia before we went on air, and I was wondering if you could share that aspect of the paranormal with our listeners.
Yes, there's quite a few places that are UFO hotspots. A lot of sightings. From the area that I'm in Sydney, the Northern Beaches is a very strong hotspot with a lot of activity. A particular place is called Narrabeen. I know that there was even a sighting last year, and I've seen some footage from a very avid ufologist who had captured a photo of a UFO coming from the ocean, and it was a very bright orange light that came through the ocean and up into the sky and out. Gone. And it was in this particular area. So for me, where I am, that's a major hotspot area, a good lookout to be able to see if there are any UFO sightings. There's also further west into the Blue Mountains, there's a lot of reported UFO activity there. There is an army base, so that people do have to be careful about that because obviously, as we know, it can look very similar. But there has been things that I've seen while on a night watch just in this particular area that with a night monocle, it's something I can't explain, the way in which lights move and the fast velocity in which they move. So there's another sort of hotspot area there. And I mean, even in the outback as well, there's even in around Uluru, there's places where it's obviously very flat ground. You get really good views. In the middle of Australia, it's really flat. So you get a really, really good view of any sort of UFO activity. So there's a good, strong UFO community here.
So besides the location that you can't disclose because of the privacy request of the owners, what would you say is the next location that you've investigated that is the most active?
Oh, it would probably have to be when I was living in the UK, and it was a location called the Ragged School Museum. And I know that there are companies that are still running events there, which is really good because sometimes with a location, if you have a lot of people going through it over time, the activity actually tends to decrease. And I've always found that really fascinating.
Right.
Very rarely you find it increase. So yes, this particular location I found was very active, and it's unusual. It's a ragged school, and a ragged school in the Victorian age was a school for the poor, because Queen Victoria had said that education should be available to everybody. So then they built these. This was basically the first public school system. And that's why it was ragged school, because these kids would be dressed in rags, but they would still be given an opportunity for education. So I love history anyway. So being from a historical point of view, it's a great, beautiful building. But at night time, it certainly had a presence of its own. And the situation that stood out for me when we were in an investigation was where some people who do know me may know this story already, but we were in a group, in a circle, in one part of a room, and in the other part of the room they had two people with their fingers on the top of the table. So it's just lightly touching, and it was a table that was sort of like your outdoor sort of table, plastic, sort of very light, something that you just have just outside in your pool. And the woman that was running it started to really antagonize this particular energy. Now, I'm not very mediumistic and very psychic. So as an investigator, I kind of go a lot with what mediums do say. I do take it with a grain of salt, but at the end of the day, it's information they say that's coming through. In this case, I actually had physical, visible proof that something was actually happening. So she was antagonizing this particular energy, and there were reasons for that. Apparently, he wasn't a very nice person, and that's the very G-rated version. And as she was doing so, the table lifted up one end, moved forward, and then went down again. And then the other side did the same. So it was actually lifting up and moving down and walking to where our group was. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad this table was white, because you could see it so much better in low light. And I can't explain how that table could walk towards it. The people that were near it had their fingers on the top and were running after it. And it was walking towards it, and she was, antagonizing it and really, giving it all she got. And it got to our group, and then she would say, now you can't get through our group, try and get through. And so it would try and move around our group, but it was still walking in that way. I've never seen a table walk. And that's kind of like the Holy Grail a little bit, So I've kind of, it was a situation that had changed my perspective on energy, changed my perspective on how to communicate with a potential entity. And I don't think I've been the same ever since, to be honest. I think it was that particular experience really changed me.
Has there ever been a time when you have said to yourself after the event's been over, like, I don't know why I'm doing this?
Yeah. There are often the nights where there's been absolutely no activity, and it can be somewhere that's got the biggest reputation of being so active that, they'll say you'll have trouble sitting down for more than 5 minutes in this spooky spot. And sometimes you can sit there for a whole night and have nothing. And then you can sit there and think, why am I doing this again? Yeah. It's a lot of times that does happen. I sometimes do fall asleep in the dark. These places are very spooky, but if nothing's happening and it's 4 a.m. and your body wants to shut down, you're really fighting against it. So there are moments where I think, why am I doing this? And then there are the Holy Grail moments where you've got a table walking in front of you for 45 minutes. So it is all or nothing sometimes. It really is.
What was it that made you, Beth, want to become a paranormal investigator and to do the work that you're doing now? As like with most investigators, their interest in the paranormal has always been there. I just never really acknowledged it as much. I just thought, I love a good ghost story, and I always found it interesting how there were people that were able to claim to speak to the dead. Yeah. And then when I moved to the UK, I actually was looking for something to do on the weekend, and I realised, because I'd only just started to watch those ghost shows. So yes, I do put my hand up. I was one of those people, but I was fascinated by what they could try and do to communicate. So I thought, I want to do something on the weekend. And I had a look, and I was able to find out that you could actually go on an investigation
on a weekend. And this was all new to me because this just at that point was not happening in Australia. It was very well known.
Right.
So I went along, and that's kind of where it all started. It was like, I've been chasing the dragon ever since, and it's being involved, not just being able to watch it and to be able to contribute and have that experience where there's something happening that you can't explain, but there's got to be an explanation. And it just drived from there, and ever since 2008, I've just been so involved. And then I thought, wow, when we moved back to Australia, my now husband and I thought, this will be great, I'll get stuck into it in Australia. There'll be plenty of places, and this will be awesome. And, the tumbleweeds rolling down across the floor, and there's whistling wind, and there was nothing. There was nothing around. And I was bitterly disappointed. I thought, I've come all this way, and the experiences in the UK were so intense, and the history is so rich, and you come to Australia and it was like a clean slate. So I thought, well, I want to find places that I can go and investigate. And luckily enough, in that time, I attended a course and actually met a couple of people, ended up joining a paranormal team, and it literally has taken off from there. But in that time, I thought, I cannot be the only person that wants to get involved in this but doesn't know where to look. And in Australia, it was only really just starting to take off from this new wave that's always been around, but this new wave of interest since all these paranormal shows had started. So I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to start a website, a spot where people can find events. They can find a directory of all different paranormal teams all around the country, publications. Even if they're looking to join a team, there's a spot there. So they can actually put their details down and say, yep, I'm looking for a team, or a team is looking for a person. And it's just a connection spot where people can actually find out more, because it was really nothing when I started. And proudly can say, 5-6 years on, it's boomed here, and there is a spot that people can go to if they're interested, and even asking advice as well. A lot of people may actually have activity in their homes, or they're not sure, if there's a team near them that lives close enough to go and speak to them about it. And so it's being able to have that knowledge and knowing, these people are obviously looking for answers regarding a negative entity. So I know a group from that area that can deal with that. So I'm able to pass that on too. So it's not just there's someone in your area, thanks so much for coming. It's knowing what they need as well. So and that's where it started, and it's been, growing ever since.
When you look at the entire paranormal scenario, ghost hauntings, aliens, your own Bigfoot, called the Yowie over there, where's the most interest? Is it in ghosts?
Yeah, it is. That's the biggest audience. The smallest, I would probably say, is cryptozoology. But definitely the whole ghost haunting side of it, I think is hugely interesting, and I think it could also be very much from a cultural perspective, where we've grown up with it longer as being more accepted and mainstream than it would be for, say, for instance, we've got in this particular area that I live in, there's the Penrith Black Panther, which is a big. They say it would have been a circus cat, a panther that has escaped, and it's actually managed to survive in the wild and is quite vicious. But apparently there are still sightings of it around. So it's that, for the last sort of 50 years type of stuff. So this is a really old cat, or there's a few of them, or, how does it survive on its own? And then, of course, as I said, it's very much more, dare I say, kind of more interesting for a lot more people, I think. But then again, I'm very much work within that field as well, as opposed to not just maybe a little bit within UFO and a little bit with cryptozoology. I have been on on squatching expedition, and that was eye-opening, very eye-opening. There are things that you hear out in the bush that you know you shouldn't be hearing, and it's not because it's a Saturday night. It is because there is thumps and bangs and wood knockings, and this is a very, very expanse part of the Australian bush. So I can see why there's going to start to be more of an interest, I think, when people know a way in which they can investigate it and find out more. But yeah, definitely more the ghost and the haunting is a much, much bigger field of interest when it comes to the paranormal here in Australia.
Why do you think the paranormal is so popular these days?
I think it's because a lot of people are starting to branch out in what happens after I die. I think a lot more people are starting to ask that question, and I think it's almost where, say for instance, I think even 20 years ago, to go to what they have now called psychic high teas, I don't think that would be something that you would encourage your friends to go and do on a Sunday afternoon. But these days it's like, yeah, let's go and check out and have a cup of tea and watch someone do a platform reading and seeing if their loved ones come through. So I think there is a very small but gradual acceptance of the paranormal, but it's still very, very gradual, very, very slow. But yeah, I think it's starting to, more so just from the shows on TV. Australia is very, very Americanized in the shows that they watched with regards to the paranormal. I know that there are people that use the methods that they watch on those shows as well. It's almost like a teaching thing at first. And I think there's definitely this new wave and this new push to have a lot of people investigating locations has been from a lot of these particular programs like Ghost Adventures and shows like that. And Most Haunted, gosh, I think I watched every episode. I annoyed all my flatmates in London by doing that. They would recite lines to me. It was so bad. But, there was nothing else around at the time. I thought that's all there was. So, and that's where my passion for education comes from, because it's good to go and find answers, sure. But then what are you going to learn from that? What are you going to come away with? Is it just the thrill, or is it because you want to find out more? So
plus, I believe that more people need to be taught the proper way to do investigations, to do research, because there are so many yahoos out there that, there are still people on this planet of ours who think just because it's on the internet, it's true. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, the internet is the biggest septic tank that man has ever created, because there's more crap in it than there is anything else.
It's so true, true. And it's good to capture someone's interest, or at least give them the beginnings of that information. Yeah. But then you've got to dig deeper, and you've got to put your Google aside and go, right, so let's find out if there's anything else out there that I can learn from, or learn a better way. And I think sometimes the field gets a bit stagnant. We've all got a K2 meter. We all know how EMF works. But is it really producing the results that we want? What about subsound? What about white noise? What about something else? Sure. Let's try something different. Just because somebody on a program and the team that you've investigated with use an EMF detector, it means it must work. Do you know why? Do you know why you're using it? It's just, it can be, frustrating sometimes. But I think, there are more people that are starting to ask those questions now, probably more than ever.
Now, do you give courses?
I do. So I do talks at the moment, so I haven't quite got to courses yet, but that's certainly in the future. There's a couple of plans to put a few things together as well. I like to be able to coordinate events, and also it helps me test the market here. It tests the field of interest where it comes to certain topics. I think to start a course straight off the bat, I think would be unwise. I just want to see where people's interests lie, because there is a smaller group that are past the beginner stage, but they're not at the university-educated psychologist stage. So there's this middle ground of people that have been doing it for a while. They want to put down the K2 and they say, I want to try something different. I want to learn more. And they're gradually becoming more and more of that style of investigators. So I think once that starts to grow, then there's a more opportunity to be able to provide courses. So it's definitely something in the future that I'm looking at for sure. But at the moment, it's coordinating events and helping other subject matter experts be able to give a voice to the paranormal field.
In your opinion, what is the number one thing that people who are getting into the ghost research phenomena are doing wrong?
Oh, good question. Becoming complacent. I think it's just allowing it to. I'm just going to do it because I'm just going to. I'm just going to go out and. One thing I have a real issue is with people who go onto properties without permission. I think that's one thing. Not a lot of people do it, but that does happen. And I think where people become to the point where it's so automatic to pick up a camera that has UV lights on it and then go, I'm just going to go and use this and just use that only and use that for every investigation, but not really want to think of outside the box and try something new. And I think that's where it starts to fall down a bit, and we just become stale. You can't. I know that repetition and in scientific experiments and investigating is important, but for years and years and years just using the same thing, if you're not getting the results, try something else.
I noticed when I was browsing your website earlier today that you have information about insurance for investigators. Can you explain this?
Yes, it took about 2 years all up to the negotiations with an insurance broker, and that was due to a lot of people emailing me about insurance when investigating locations, especially government and council locations, because they really do need to have that financial and legal backing to know that their properties are going to be protected. And it was very difficult to find an insurance broker originally, because they're thinking, we'll put you under the, what was it? One guy said he was put into the category of pest control. I'm like, pests, ghosts can be pests if they're really angry, but couldn't see the correlation. So it was that kind of, it's such an unknown area. Even when it came to trying to get insurance, we were put under that same sort of banner as, we'll just throw you in the other category. And so I worked with this particular insurance broker about finding insurance that had to be affordable as well as covering what we did. And that was a dance. It took a dance for 18 months just on that. And because the paranormal field is a not-for-profit field, a lot of people don't do this to earn a living. They do it because they love it, and they do it because they want to find some answers. Very, very rarely do you find avenues to be able to make money from this. So it had to be cost effective. A lot of money people put in go into their equipment and petrol to drive to places, or gas, or being able to reinvest back into it, food, supplies, batteries. Oh, goodness, the batteries that people go through. We should, all investors should, invest in Duracell or Energizer or something, because, we go through batteries like it's going out of fashion. So it had to be something that had to be cost effective and cover us from a legal point of view where we met the requirements of government and council properties, which is a $20 million cover, which is the minimum. So I worked back and forth with this lovely guy, and finally were able to nut something down. And it covers mediums as well as paranormal investigators. So for mediums who have events at festivals or expos or anything like that, they can also be covered for their stall as well. So it had to cover workshops, investigations, locations, all the broad range of stuff that an investigator might actually do, as well as just investigate. And so this is what this particular insurance would cover. So it took a while, but it's now available. I just have it on the website. I don't get any financial backing on it whatsoever. I don't get any fees or anything. It's literally just a spot to capture an audience to say, if you're interested in being covered for public liability, this is the information for you to explore for yourself. I have no idea who's on there. I've got no idea how many groups have it. So it's very, very confidential, and I'm glad for that, because I don't want to know. It's a privacy breach as well, and I don't want to. So it's there for them to be able to explore.
What's it like to wear so many paranormal hats? You're an event organizer, you're a co-host, you're a speaker, investigator, podcaster. My gosh, how do you get time to do all of these things?
It's like that, isn't it? Yeah. There's 24-hour day things. I'm going to put a sort of a complaint in. I think it should be 32. It does get busy. It gets really busy. I do work full time as well. And so my days are 14, 18-hour days usually, from sort of, 6:30 in the morning till 8, 9 at night, sometimes 10 at night. And that's a fairly standard day. I know the husband's grumbled at me a few times in recent weeks, where it's like, okay, I want my wife back. It's like, really? I'm right in the middle of doing something. So it is pretty full on, and you do have to manage it. But I do like the fact that I've always been somebody who doesn't just want to be someone who coordinates events. I'm also passionate about speaking. Right. I'm also passionate about educating, and that comes through the podcast. And I'm passionate about being able to provide opportunities for people, or giving advice for people who may not know where to turn. So I don't think it's wise for myself in my business to just pigeonhole myself in one area. I think it's very important to be able to see it from all sides. So instead of not just organising an event, I know it's like to speak at them too. So I can even be better at organising events and understanding the needs of speakers, and a really good learning environment. I think a lot of people underestimate how learning environments are equally as important. Quiet places where they're comfortable heating or cooling. There's the right refreshments, the right type of the people that you've drawn and advertised that particular event are on the same wavelength as you. Your advertising, your marketing is hitting the right audience. So a lot of people, I think, even in other fields and other industries and other parts of the world, that is very, very important, but I don't think anyone's really taking that consideration when it comes to the paranormal. It's giving the field the respect it deserves.
And that's going to take some time.
Yeah.
Listen, stand by. You and I have to take a commercial break at the bottom of the hour. Exo Nation, our guest this hour is BETH LUSCOMBE, I should say, www.accessparanormal.com, and we'll be back on the other side as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and around the world on the X-Zone Broadcast Network and the Starcom Radio Network. Don't go away. Ever wondered if your advertising dollar is really working for you? If your ad would have been here, you and more than 4 million people would be listening to it right now. Contact ads at xzoneradiotv.com.
Do you have a dis-ease that you would like to alleviate through a natural means? Have you been contacted by angels, ghosts, or even extraterrestrials and want to validate these experiences? Or would you simply like to speak with someone who can help you find your life's purpose? I'm Dr. Joseph Mara, and I'm offering my services free of charge for first-time clients contacting me during the month of April. These free consultations include angel card readings, guided meditations, life coaching, and energy healing. If you have always wanted to explore these types of experiences but were skeptical or simply could not afford them, then take advantage of this free special offer. Contact me through my website, aguidinglight, spelled LITE.com, to schedule your consultation today. Until then, I offer you love, light, and laughter.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
Back in Victorian England, a famous theologian posed a perplexing riddle. Why are the two top personalities in the Bible tagged with the numbers 7 and 11? Academics agree the answer is found in the stunning discovery of a hitherto secret Bible structure explained in a new book called The Genesis Grid. The discovery is so simple that preschool children could illustrate it. Certain claims are hugely controversial and may offend some, but at the X-Zone, we've studied this awesome new book and agree with one expert, and I quote, "These discoveries appear to be beyond coincidence." So who or what hid this wonderful pattern in the Bible, and what might they do next? Find out more, X-Zone Nation, and read reviews on www.genesisgrid.co.uk. That's www.genesisgrid.co.uk. Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com, or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464. The ability to access the knowledge of the universe is much easier for us to access than we may believe. Brad Johnson, Conscious Matrix Communicator, is one of these unique individuals who is able to access a strong connection to the universal mind. Through his connection, Brad has assisted thousands of clients from all over the world through natural intuitive assistance. The intuitive information received is vast, covering a wide range of subjects. Brad's innate ability includes being able to access one's own universal matrix to help them realize their potential to create a life of profound greatness. One-on-one private sessions with Brad Johnson are available to anyone from around the world. Brad is also a proficiently trained psychic, Akashic Records reader, an online spiritual teacher, founder of his own unique and powerful healing system, Body Regeneration Healing, as well as a professional conscious channeler in communication with his own higher self-consciousness known as Adronis. For more information or to book a service appointment with Brad Johnson, visit his website at www.consciousmatrix.com. That's www.consciousmatrix.com.
Hi, this is Ken Elliott. When I'm floating around the universe, I always try to tune in to Rob McConnell.
Hi, ho there, Twinkie Frog on Sesame Street. When I want to find out what's going on with UFOs or ghosts, I listen to the X Zone with Rob McConnell.
This is Les Corrigan from Target Internet Development. You're listening to Rob McConnell on the X Zone Radio Show.
This is John Hogue, Prophecy Scholar, and you're listening to Rob McConnell in the X Zone.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
We're talking about the paranormal this hour, except we're talking about the paranormal in Australia. Beth is our guest, and she is with accessparanormal.com. And Beth, how do the indigenous people in Australia, how do they fit into the paranormal legends and myths?
Good question, Rob. It's an interesting situation with the Aboriginal Indigenous Australians when it comes to the paranormal. And this is actually, from an investigator point of view, a bit of a roadblock, because in the culture of Aboriginal people, to talk about the dead or the paranormal is actually very frowned upon. So it's something that is very difficult to be able to actually approach an elder, an Aboriginal elder, about any paranormal activity that could be happening in someone's home or on a location. So that makes it very difficult, because a lot of what is passed on from Aboriginal cultures is all spoken word. Very rarely will you find something that is actually written down. It's how their information is passed on. So yes, it actually is quite difficult when it comes to, because there are locations and cases I've worked on where there's a very strong Aboriginal presence in the house, especially when it's been an area where Aboriginal groups would actually be able to go through, and they would travel to certain areas at certain times of the year, and a lot of them would be passing through someone's house in a spiritual way still. And that was one particular case that I came across. And so that the people in the house would see, a dark Indigenous Australian watching outside their house. And so when that comes up, normally you're able to consult with somebody who does have a lot of knowledge in that. So finding somebody who you can do that with is very, very rare. So it is a bit of a stumbling block, believe it or not. There's a real don't talk about the dead. Once they have passed, they have passed. And from what I had spoken to from a lady who I actually do have a contact, an Aboriginal lady, lovely woman, very, very happy to talk about the spirituality with Aboriginal cultures and when people do pass. And I said to her, look, this is a real issue for us because, you know, a lot of this is where Australia was founded by these beautiful people. They were here first. Their culture's here, their energy, if you believe in that, it's all in their rocks and the trees and their ways of life. They were here for 40,000 years that we know of before the Europeans had tried to settle. And she said a lot of it was when they did try to settle in Australia, the European colonies, they didn't want the Aboriginal people to talk about the dead. So it's actually something that's brought on from the Christian faith that a lot of the Aboriginal people have adopted on. Before that, they would talk about their ancestors. They would paint on the walls and they would talk about the dream time, like we mentioned earlier.
Sure.
But once they started to colonise Australia with the way in which the Europeans and their beliefs, then they were told, no, you can't talk about the dead. And that's filtered through now, where it's really difficult to find someone who will talk to you about the paranormal when it comes to the Aboriginal spirituality.
Must be hard as a paranormal investigator to have that wall there.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It makes it difficult. You have to respect their reasons for that. It's, you know, I'm not an Indigenous Australian, so even though I might find it difficult, you know, stuff that. That's how they believe. That's what they want to do, and I have to respect that. But yeah, it does. It's really difficult because when you're trying to help somebody who's got activity in their home, where things are moving, and especially if there's children in the house, they tend to be the cases where you want to take on and solve as soon as you can, especially with littles. It can be hard to say that to a client. Look, I'm lucky enough I've got somebody I can speak to, but this may take some time, and this is sometimes quite a difficult subject to be able to find information from. So it's actually also educating the general public about it too. You know,
I understand that in recent years you've started to focus on highlighting the need for the use of psychology in the paranormal. Why is that?
I think it's when you look at a paranormal team here in Australia, there's often three distinct areas that a team will have a focus on. There's your research. There's always somebody who's a really good historian or really interested in history. There's also people who are very, very technically minded, so they're really into the whole equipment side of it, setting it up, how it works. There's also people who deal with the mediumship side, so the people that are able to communicate with the energies that are in locations. But there's no one really specific that it kind of deals with or has the background knowledge enough for the biggest tool that we use, and that's our minds. And I think that's the one place people should start before they start to look at everywhere else. And it's how we understand information, how we perceive information, how, you know, visual pareidolia, we see faces in things because, you know, faces are the most common thing we see all the time. So, of course, we're going to want to feel safe and make images into faces because we see it so often. Sure. And then the flip side of that is audible pareidolia. So, of course, we're going to hear voices in muffled sounds because we hear voices more than anything else. It's just how we're built. But if we understand even just the small basics like that, and, of course, it goes for many different layers after that, I think it makes us better investigators. We can eliminate more if something does occur and actually think, well, you know, this actually may be potentially something that's paranormal, as opposed to jumping at it going, I heard a voice, it's paranormal. Oh, look, there's a face in that orb, that's a paranormal thing, you know, that's got to be Aunt Maud. It's, you know, we need to start we need to debunk first. I think that's something that gets lost a lot. Especially when you're in the moment. I've been guilty of it a few times where, oh, that sounds awesome. That can't be naturally explained. It's like, whoa, you know, turn it down, lady. You need to settle a bit and then pull it apart, debunk first before you actually go, yep, this is paranormal. That's something that I can't explain. I can't find a natural explanation from my understanding and my research. But yeah, psychology is very, very left behind. I think and it can also be the fact the topic can be quite intense. I know some research papers I've read that have been really informative, but it can be like eating a lemon. It's a little bit, you know, strong. It's a bit intense, but it's necessary. So I guess that's another passion of mine, is to be able to find ways in which it can be educated and conveyed in a simpler form. The information is right, it's there, but it doesn't have to be as technical in the way in which it's presented. So anyone who wants to really start to get this teeth stuck into this can actually do so without feeling as though they need a university degree for psychology. They can actually understand the basics of it, and that's where it's good to start. I mean, there are people in teams that are social workers and community workers, and I think that is vital. That's a good step forward in that direction, where people understand what it's like when someone's having a mental health issue, and that's hugely undervalued, I think, when it comes to private cases, or in the States, and I think in Canada it's also called residential cases, where you're dealing with somebody with activity in their home as opposed to a public location. So it's having that background, I think, even just having an understanding of certain mental health issues, because they can be very easily mistaken as somebody experiencing something paranormal. Yeah. So it's you don't have to diagnose. We're not looking for people who are doctors going, oh, look, yep, that's a case of depression. Sorry, love, can't help you. It's just knowing the signs. Right, we don't have the right to diagnose.
Right, but where does the responsibility lie? For example, if somebody does decide that this person is not having a paranormal experience, but they're having more of a mind over matter experience, doctors and psychologists, they go to school for many years and they're licensed and they have to go before a board of their peers and so on. And this doesn't apply to the paranormal investigators. Is there any danger that by not having enough experience, or as we've learned in the past, a little bit of experience can be more dangerous than a lot of experience, where does the responsibility of the paranormal investigator lie when it comes to deciding whether or not a person is actually having a paranormal experience or it's a matter of their psyche?
Really, really good question, and that is probably one of the greyest areas because you're there to help somebody in their situation, and if you do, there's a course that is called Mental Health First Aid, and I've only recently coordinated a session with paranormal investigators, so the discussions were about people experiencing paranormal phenomena as opposed to just also experiencing mental health issues. It's a very, very, very grey area, and it's one that you have to tread very carefully. It's if it is a situation where an investigator looks at a case and thinks, actually a lot of what is being experienced can be easily explained, that can be an indicator that this may be something more going on from a mental health perspective. But also at the same time, it's because it's, again, mental health, probably also like the paranormal, has a stigma attached to it. So even just raising it with people can be quite difficult to do, but it's important. There are numbers that people can actually give to people who are going through a difficult time, or if you feel there might be something that it is definitely a lot more of a mental health issue, which one it is or what it could be. It's obviously not up to diagnose, but if it's a lot of the phenomena is something that can definitely be 100% explained, and often sometimes in private cases you will offer this information, and if people want to believe, they want to believe. Sure. They want to believe if it's paranormal, and especially if it's somebody else in the house who may be experiencing mental health issues, but the rest of the family don't want to believe that could be the case. So it's very easier to deal with if you say to that person, look, it's I believe if this person's got a negative entity attached to them, when it could actually just be they're going through the beginnings of or they're showing signs of schizophrenia.
I understand that. I understand that, but in my opinion, that's not up to someone who wants to chase ghosts. That way of doing it belongs to a trained professional.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and that's what it's when it comes to that, you say, look, these. Look, I've debunked a lot of this through rational and going through and investigating certain parts. Absolutely, so you offer a number for them to call. That's all you can do, because often in the case that most people won't tell you if they're on medication or if they do have mental health issues. And unfortunately, a lot of the cases, private cases, people come across are people who do have these conditions. So it's, it's another way to help explain what's going on when they haven't been given the right information, or it's harder for them to accept. So yeah, absolutely. Investigators should not be diagnosing and or sitting there going, now, I think you have a schizophrenia there. Right. So, here we go. This is your mental health plan. No, it's offering information saying, look, I've debunked what I can do. I can explain that this is natural phenomena. But if you need any other help, look, I can suggest there's a number here for you to call if you want to speak to somebody about some of the things you're experiencing that's all you can do. It's up to them whether they take it or not. You're definitely not one to tell them that, and diagnose and yeah, exactly. There's a reason why people, are trained professionals in this area. We're investigators. We should not be doing that.
How many cases have you come across where there is no haunting, there is no paranormal activity? The reason behind the claims are you've got someone who just wants to try and get their 15 minutes of fame.
Oh, how many hands and toes do you have, Rob? Honestly, it's a lot. Again, these shows have been fabulous in raising awareness and interest, and that there is ways you can actually get involved in paranormal investigating. But then there's the backlash, and that's the backlash where you will get people who will say, I've got it, and it's something you can often pick up in the interviewing process, because there's little things that they give away which give you indications that their intentions aren't to actually find answers. It just means, I want to see how you do this. And it can be, and the biggest key, and it sounds really obvious, that they let it slip that they watch those ghost shows. Yeah, so that's the biggest key. Sometimes it can take a while for that to come out, but you can hear it in there. Oh no, I'm really interested, and I'm starting to see spirits, and Aunt Maud says that I can see energies, and I saw someone in the corner the other day, and I'd love it if you could come along and have another medium and sit with me, and that, red lights go off, and you're not there to help give answers. You're there to help validate whether they think they've got a way to be able to communicate with the dead. So there are a lot of times where people will do that to see how you work, to see what it's like to be an investigator in their home. And sometimes they'll sit there and say, so when you come over for this investigation, so they've already determined by speaking to you that you'll do that. And that's often the last resort. The last thing you ever do is investigate. It's often determining whether or not you're going to put 12 hours of your life and their life in a controlled environment to detect whether something's going on. But that's the first indication. And then secondly, they'll say, can I bring my mates over? I wouldn't mind, can I just bring a couple of friends, and you think, well, hang on, I thought this is something you couldn't tell anybody about. So It's just,
But as far as the paranormal investigators themselves, is there a lot of competition between the investigators and the different groups?
Oh yeah, there is, and it's something that I've been able to detect and see in the UK as well as in the States as well.
Everywhere,
and it's everywhere. It's everywhere. As long as it's a volunteer organisation style setup where it's not for profit, it's going to be more rife than it would be if it was a paid professional qualification. I think you'll find a lot more people, because it's so up to personal interpretation. You'll find a lot more people will feel that their team is better, and it's good to be confident. Don't get me wrong. If you love what you do and you can find information and be able to contribute something of worth, by all means. But yeah, there are turf wars. There are turf wars everywhere. And it does happen. I'm pretty sure you've heard the branding of paranormal unity that's thrown around a bit. You either are someone who sits in what is considered the paranormal unity side, or you're someone who just goes, well, that just does not work, because you can't get everybody to like everybody. To me, paranormal unity just means respecting the fact that everybody wants to be in this. You don't even have to like them. And there are people in the field that I don't like, and I know there's people that don't like me, but that's just because we're individuals. And as long as there's that level of respect, then who says you can't sort of, be involved in the same field? It's your reasons for being there. And I think that's a big part. But yeah, there are turf wars, and there are groups that will, in the past have very much been quite influential in the way they speak about how they think that they can be this and they can be that. Mm-hmm. It's just human nature. It just happens to be in the paranormal field, and it's not for profit, so it's rife.
Beth, we're coming up to the point where you and I will need to say so long for now. But what is your message for the worldwide audience of the X-Zone Nation tonight?
Keep investigating, finding answers, try different things. If you want to find a group or investigate on your own, there's potential to be able to do both. But if you love the paranormal, go out and do it. It's chasing the dragon, but it's just so fascinating to see and witness things that you can't normally explain.
And let our listeners know how they can find out more about you and the work you do, and if they're looking for a paranormal investigator in Australia, maybe they'll give you an email.
Yes, that's true. They can find all this information on accessparanormal.com. Also, my email address, if you want to flick me through an email with any questions about anything regarding Australia and the investigators, it's accessparanormal@gmail.com.
Beth, I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great pleasure, and I hope that I have the pleasure of speaking to you again in the future.
Oh, you certainly do.
Thank you very much, Beth. Good night now.
Thanks a lot.
There you go, Exonation, the paranormal in Australia. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news at the top of the hour as we continue here in the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network and around the world on the Starcom Radio Network. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away.